All right, so I'd like to thank everybody for coming. My intention today is to give you guys a quick overview of the Teaching Academy and what it's about. So the Teaching Academy was started in, was launched in 2020, and it's based on a platform used by other Nordic institutions like, University of Lund, DTU, etc. And the main intention of the Academy is to promote an ongoing dialogue about teaching quality, teaching development in universities and also between universities. So at least one of the problems that I've noticed in higher education is people tend not to speak to one another. We sort of end up in bubbles. So this is sort of the intention is to try to break that bubble. And the aim of this is to basically reward teachers who excel at teaching and to promote excellence in teaching overall. Now, the Teaching Academy, as most of you are probably aware, is a cooperation between the public universities in Iceland, so University of Iceland, University of Akureyri, Polar, and the Agricultural University. One of the questions I'm frequently asked is, why should I apply to the Teaching Academy? Other than the obvious benefits, there is an actual financial incentive. So members of the Academy receive an extra 50,000 kroner per month in salary, paid out once per year. I'll let you do the math on after taxes. At least last year, we received this financial incentive in the month of July. Now, there are some other benefits to joining the Academy. I can at least speak personally. I applied to join just because I wanted an excuse to talk about teaching. And what I found among the other members of the Academy, including our new inductees this year, is that the members of the Academy absolutely love to talk about teaching, how teaching is done, what works, what doesn't work, what our concerns and problems are, and troubleshooting how we can go about actually, solving those problems, in the real world, i.e. in the classroom. So last year, 2021, we inducted 11 members, sort of the first round of inductees. This year, we just admitted 9 new members. And next year, we will be admitting, I believe, 15 new members. Now, to be eligible for the Teaching Academy, you need to be 50% employed at the university in a permanent position. And you need to basically be an excellent teacher. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a moment. So the application process for this year is, this is sort of a preliminary informational meeting, but can I move this bubble? Go away. By the 20th of January, what we'll do is we'll have a registration deadline for sort of a preparatory writing application process. This is totally optional. I actually did not do this before I applied, and I really, really wish I had. From what I've seen from just taking part of this process earlier this year, it's very, very beneficial. I think I could have saved myself a lot of time and hassle by actually attending the Academy's sort of how to write a teaching portfolio workshops. So for those that are interested in sort of attending this workshop or series of workshops, the deadline is the 20th of January, which you can register for by visiting our webpage, and we'll have more information about that a bit later. And then in February of 2023, we'll actually have these workshops and seminars on how to write a teaching application or how to write a teaching portfolio. In March of 2023, we'll basically provide feedback to the participants via 2 mechanisms. We'll have a round of peer feedback where someone in the Academy will basically sort of review your application, point out what's good, what's not good, what needs improving, what needs to be more strongly emphasized, and so on. And then finally, we'll have feedback from other members of the Academy a little bit later in the month. Now, the deadline for actually submitting an application to the Teaching Academy this year is the 25th of April. So basically, applications need to be submitted to our email address no later than the 25th. Whoops. There we go. So the application itself basically consists of 3 main components. You have the teaching portfolio, which is typically on the order of 5,000 to 6,000 words. Curriculum vitae or resume. I'm still not entirely sure what the difference between those 2 things is. And then a letter of support from the dean. And all applications need to be submitted to the following address on or before the deadline. Now, the point of the teaching portfolio itself, of which the most important part is probably the teaching portfolio, the most important part of the teaching application, the application for the Teaching Academy is in fact the teaching portfolio. And the teaching portfolio should emphasize 4 major components. The first of which is student-centric teaching. Members of the Teaching Academy need to have an absolute crystal razor sharp focus on serving the students' educational needs. Second is applicants need to sort of demonstrate that they have a good knowledge of pedagogy. Maybe not in strictly academic pedagogical terms, but they need to sort of understand how to discuss teaching and learning, particularly from a sort of a very reflective standpoint. So good applications in the past have sort of given examples of what works, what doesn't work, and why? How did you improve upon it? What feedback did you get from the students? What other kinds of metrics did you look for as an educator to sort of build upon and improve your teaching? The other thing that's really important in applications is to have a sort of a clear teaching development plan for the future. How do you plan on developing yourself as an educator? And finally, we'd like all of our members to sort of be active participants in the conversations about teaching. Now, when I applied this, I thought it was kind of a little bit challenging. What does that actually mean? So what this can mean in practice is, just talking to fellow teachers, going to conferences, sharing what works, just sort of taking part of the broader conversation about teaching. And this is actually one of the venues that, the Teaching Academy is actually trying to strengthen here in Iceland. Now, all applications, once they're submitted, will be analyzed or evaluated by 3 external Scandinavian experts from other institutions like University of Lund, DTU, Uppsala, etc. And we'll have 1 specialist from an Icelandic institution. So it's primarily an external evaluation. And then once all the teaching applications are evaluated, members may be asked to do an interview as sort of a final component of actually joining the Academy. So for more information, you can check out our webpage. There will be a lot of work done in the coming weeks and months on sort of improving the webpage and making more information available. But already on the webpage, you can find additional information that's useful. Some sample applications from previous members from both 2021 and 2022's intake. There are actually some really good applications from 2022 that are available on the webpage this year. And there will also be more additional information about the registration process. Yeah, and actually you can find it here at this link. So that's pretty much the long and the short of it. Joining me is Matthew Welpton. I'm going to stop sharing so you can actually see Matthew. There's Matthew. From the University of Iceland. He's also on the executive board of the Kensal Academy, and we will happily take any questions you may or may not have about writing applications, writing a portfolio, what it is we actually do, etc. So Matthew would probably be better at answering sort of the like related to like how much time participating in the workshop in the lead up to writing an application takes. I know from at least my experience, writing an application probably took about 60 to 70 hours. And I will admit that I started way too late. I wish I had started way sooner. Matthew, how long do you think participating in the workshops and the other lead up activities consumes?
So in terms of the workshop themselves, I think the workshop was just a couple of hours to get people going and explain what the critical elements in the teaching portfolio are. Then, of course, there's a drafting process, which, as you say, it is a fair amount of work, and I imagine it would have been a similar amount of time. So essentially, the process is you attend the workshop, which is maybe 2 hours, and then you start the drafting process, and you really want to get maybe two-thirds of your application, maybe 4,000 words, something like that, down, get some of the key ideas. And then that is submitted to peer review. So that means that as a participant, you will be paired with one of the other applicants in the process or one of the other participants in the workshop. You'll look at each other's. So there's a certain amount of time you have to read their draft and you want to provide them some constructive feedback. And obviously that, I would say it's a good day or two's work to sort of read over someone's think about how they've done it, provide them with a bit of feedback. You're given, last year we set people maybe a week to have a look at that and then provide feedback. We may try and give a little bit more time this year. We've tried to sort of rethink that process a little. And then you continue with writing your draft until it's pretty much done as a full first draft. And then it goes to members of the Teaching Academy. So obviously then that's not extra work for you as an applicant, then you're just waiting for them to give you feedback. And then you can continue with refining so that you have the submittable version. So it's quite intensive. It depends on how much background you have as well. I was lucky enough that I've been taking part in this course in higher education teaching, finally as a professor learning how to be a university teacher. But that meant that I already had lots of material related to sort of teaching portfolio-like elements that I could use. It depends how much material you have in the background. It depends on how much you've reflected about your teaching. But I would say that Sean's estimate for the overall drafting process is fairly accurate. There's a reasonable amount of time. And then the formal aspects are less. It's basically attending the workshop, which is a couple of hours, and then providing the peer review feedback, which is maybe another sort of day's worth, something like that.
And I would add that as part of the writing process, at least one of the elements I found most time consuming is gathering the so-called evidence of teaching. So, I mean, lots of us have lesson plans, lots of us have activities sort of squirreled away, and just sort of like gathering all that together and actually going through the process of organizing it, trying to figure out what's actually worth including in the portfolio because it, exemplifies good teaching. That I found to be probably as time consuming as actually writing the application itself.
Yeah, that was one of the trickiest parts. Actually, I just found, so that was one of the things that was most beneficial for me in the workshop, was sort of working out what they meant by evidence and what was a good example of evidence as they saw it for constructing the portfolio. And then, like you, it was, you have to hand select. So what you're absolutely not supposed to do is do a data dump. Here is 500 pages of all my teaching assessments or something awful like that. You do have to think about what is a good window into how I assess whether the teaching I'm doing is working. What are the main methods I use? And then you have to sort of select examples that are going to be helpful for an evaluator to see. So I took some things from my teaching portfolios. I took some learning analytics from Moodle. I took some interviews I did with students, and I sort of selected bits. And then you have to obviously format them so that they can fit into a file because you have to put yourself in the shoes of the evaluator. If you were evaluating it, what would you like to see to be able to understand what the evidence being used is? So that was kind of a bit tricky and time consuming, but for me, it sort of fitted into this broad amount of time that you mentioned, but it was one of the most difficult parts.
Ég er bara að hugsa ekki kannski hvernig þetta akademían er uppbyggð eða hvernig á sækjum í hana svoleiðis. Mér langar meira að vita hvað þetta fólk sem í akademíunni, hvað það að gera fyrir okkur hina? Hvernig það hvað það að gera fyrir hana 50 skall á mánuði og svoleiðis. Hvernig það uppfræða okkur hin sem ekki svona góð?
Já, ég myndi ekki einu sinni svona alveg orða það þannig. Það fullt af fínum kennurum út allt, en þetta hefur bara greinilega skipt gríðarlega miklu máli í umræðu sem hefur verið síðustu 2 ár. Að sjálfsögðu vilja meðlimir í akademíu bara skipta máli fyrir kennarasamfélagi kringum sig. Það kemur fyrir svona ýmsum, í raun og veru það eru sumarverkefni sem að fara að koma í gang til að hafa beinlínis svona áhrif á samkennarum, þannig að það bara kannski tvennt sem við erum að reyna að þróa. Við erum að reyna að svona koma upp svona dæmi góða starfsvenju í kennslu, svona takmarka upplýsingar. Við köllum þetta svona kennslumóðar sem við getum sett saman ef fólk hafa áhuga hvernig kem ég upp umræðu í tímanum, hvernig bara sniðugt leið til að bæta námsmat eða hvernig bara góð leið til að kenna fjarnám eða eitthvað, bara koma sem nokkuð dæmi sem hægt að senda út, að gefa dæmi það sem meðlimir í akademíunni að gera eða sniða hugmyndir sem þeir finna, að hjálpa kennslumiðstöð hjá okkur og hjá ykkur í raun og veru að safna saman slíka upplýsingar til dreifingar. Það bara eitt. Annað sem við erum að hugsa að reyna að gera að styðja við kennsluheimsóknir, bæði svona jafning hjá matkennara, bæði að styðja við kerfi til að láta kennara heimsækja hvort öðrum bara almennt, bæði innan stofnunar og milli stofnana, þannig að kennarar fá að sjá og tala saman sín eigin kennslu, bera saman bækur kennslu, en líka bjóða upp á að meðlimir í akademíunni bara heimsækja fólk eða leyfa fólk til að heimsækja sig og þá bara hafa bara eitthvað umræðu hvernig kennslan var. Þetta svolítið í undirbúningi hjá okkur og þá í raun og veru bara almennt líka við erum að reyna að fá meðlimir í akademíunni bara út allt eins mikið og hægt til þess að þeir geta verið að vissu leyti leiðandi í umræðu kennslu, því að það mjög áberandi að þeir sem að sækja núna oftast alveg eins og Sean nefndi, að sækja því að þeir fá ekki tækifæri til að tala kennslu. Það mjög misjafnt milli starfseininga háskólans og háskólanna hvað það mikið rætt kennslu. Þannig að ég var að stýra rannsóknarverkefni í fyrra rýnihóp kennslu hjá kennurum og í sumum einingum hjá okkur mikið rætt kennslu en í sumum bara næstum því ekki neitt rætt. Og það mjög áberandi hjá þeir sem eru komnir inn í akademíunni að þeir bara í raun og veru fengi ekki tækifæri í sínum einingum til að tala kennslu og við erum að vona að með því að vera þátttakandi í meðlim í akademíunni, fá tækifæri til að tala kennslu, þá getur fólk farið út og reyna að tala meira að halda upp í almennu umræðu. Því að hugsunarhætti í akademíunni ekki eitthvað að vera elita sem betri en hinnum, það meira að gerjast fyrir umræðu í kennslu og dreifa svona best practice almennt í félaginu og ekki bara frá þeim sjálfum en að láta þetta dreifast meira. Og við erum líka opnir fyrir hugmyndir, ef fólk með hugmyndir þannig séð hvað gæti verið gert. Og ég segi líka, ég vil bara taka fram að þessi umbun, þetta svolítið svona, það ekki í raun og veru laun til að vinna áfram, þetta meira eins og hefur verið með rannsókn líka, þetta viðurkenning, hvað fólk sem kemur í akademíunni búin að leggja á sig þegar til að byggja upp teaching portfolio eins og og í raun og veru uppfylla þessa viðmið. Fólk í raun og veru yfir tíma búin að leggja á sig svolítið mikið án þess nokkuð tíma að fá neitt umbun eða viðurkenning að þetta var neitt flott. Í raun og veru vinnumatskerfi hjá okkur leggur alla áherslu á rannsókn, þannig að það í raun og veru eins og maður aumingi að hafa þetta tíma svo mikið í kennslu þegar maður á að vera í rannsókn. Þetta í raun og veru að reyna að viðurkenna það sem hefur verið gert. En að sjálfsögðu það líka þannig að fólk sem að koma inn, það skiptir þeim máli að kennslan þróist, að læra betur, þróa sig sjálf og vera í skemmtilegra umhverfi hvað kennslan varðar. Og þess vegna, það að sjálfsögðu að meðlimir í akademíunni vil skipta máli fyrir samfélagi kringum sig.